Hi, my name is Dr. McBride.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Jones. This is my son Tom. He's 5 years old. Say hi, Tom.
Hi, Tom. So what brings you in today?
Well, we've been seeing our regular pediatrician, and he recommended me to use a developmental pediatrician because I was seeing some very abnormal behaviors in my son Tom. To start off, whenever I call his name, he rarely looks at me or answers back. And his teacher at school also told me that he has a very difficult time interacting with his peers, and he gets frustrated when he doesn't get his way. Now, also, doctor, I've seen that at home where he gets very frustrated. And I've also noticed he has a hard time communicating with me. For example, the other night I asked Tom what he wanted for dinner. And instead of just pointing or giving me a simple gesture, he rambled on with these random words, and I could not understand what he was saying, and therefore he got frustrated with me and stomped off. And so I just don't understand how our communication is. I just don't understand it. I've also noticed his maturity is not progressing for his age. Stop it, okay? I want to hear what the doctor has to say.
Okay, what about, how does he feel about routines? Like throughout the day, does he take them pretty normally, or is he very, 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 like, it's essential to him to have a set routine all the time?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because now that I'm thinking about it, he really likes following a routine. For example, I usually drive from school, and we usually go the same way every day. But some days I like to go down a different road and just take a different route to school. And I have noticed this really upsets Tom a lot. He notices when anything in his daily routine is out of order, he notices and gets very frustrated and screams and yells.
Okay, and I know this would be a weird question, but does he have a obsession of any object or toy or movie that you've seen a lot?
Well, actually, doctor, he does have an obsession. He has an obsession with Hot Wheel cars. And I know that most kids his age really likes a toy. I understand, but with him, it just seems really unusual and abnormal to me because he just really has this intense knowledge and knows all this detail about it. And he lines them up in a row all over the house, and he can tell you pretty much anything you want to know about Hot Wheels. He can even tell you the first year that they started making them and the first type of models that they did. And
Wow. So, well, taking into consideration, we're going to have to do extra behavioral screenings. However, from the symptoms that you're describing to me, this sounds like autism to me.
I've heard of autism, but can you describe to me what exactly is autism?
Sure, I can.
Autism spectrum disorder, or as it's more commonly referred to, autism, is a group of complex disorders within the brain that are noticeable by difficulties with social interaction, verbal and nonverbal communication, as well as repetitive behaviors. Autism can be diagnosed through a various series of PET scans, EEGs, MEGs, and MRIs. Children with autism have different brain formation than normal children, meaning that different parts of the brain are enlarged or smaller than your average child. This is due to an increase or decrease in neurons in different locations of the brain. This results in a variation of information traveling between the neurons. In some, there are too many synapses formed. In others, there are too few synapses formed. And in others, there is an incorrect balance of excitatory and inhibitory signals being sent. Most of the time, synapses are overly immature. They will make weak connections that don't really last and fall apart easily.
The brainstem in here, which is in charge of the basic life functions, breathing, heartbeat, that sort of thing. And within it, you have the pons, medulla, and midbrain. In this case, we want to focus on the midbrain, which is most affected by autism, which is in charge of eye and body movement.
Most children with autism spectrum disorder have a decreased brainstem. The axons in the reticular system, which help control motor issues, coordination, and visual acuity, are decreased, meaning that they can't form enough synapses with the rest of the brain to deliver messages. This results in those issues of children rocking and not being able to quite control exactly what they want to do with their bodies.
And then there's the corpus callosum, which is located right here, and it's in control of motor, sensory, and cognitive information, specifically eye movement, tactile localization, and attention.
Children on the autism spectrum also tend to have a smaller corpus callosum. This creates erratic firing or poor communication depending on if there's an increase or decrease of synapses made between the two hemispheres of the brain. This decreased corpus callosum is most common between all autistic children, which explains why most autistic children have difficulty with language, asserting dominance and social standards.
There's also the thalamus, which is gray matter in the forebrain, and it's in control of motor functions, but it's also the last relay site for axons before information goes to the cerebral cortex. There's also the amygdala, which is located right here, and it's in charge of emotions and memory. So then this is the cerebrum, which is involved in higher function through four separate lobes. This is a diagram of the four different lobes of the cerebrum. There's the parietal lobe, which is involved in stimulus recognition, movement, orientation, and recognition, specifically facial recognition. And there's the frontal lobe, which is involved in reasoning, planning, muscle movement, emotions, and speech.
Children with autism also tend to have an enlarged amygdala. This amygdala is not sufficiently activated within the parietal lobes, and so paying attention to faces and making eye contact tends to be difficult for them. This means that they are going to inspect via the periphery. This is due mostly in part to the fact that there is a decreased amount of neurons within the parietal lobes, so when information does transfer from there to the thalamus, it doesn't quite reach it actively, and therefore it can't communicate effectively. Overall, the increased amount of axons in the frontal lobe with the decreased amount of axons in the parietal lobe make it difficult for neurons to communicate once they reach the thalamus due to the different lengths of the axons and by the skewed distribution of the gray matter in the thalamus, which would alter synaptic signals.
And then this is the basal ganglia, which is involved in motor acts and helps initiate voluntary movement.
Behavioral issues such as compulsive behaviors, issues with routine changes, and stereotypical motions such as rocking or constant fidgeting can be accounted for by an enlarged basal ganglia. This is caused by a disruption in the connection between the cerebrum and the cerebellum due to an increased or excess amount of neurons in the cerebrum and the cerebellum that fire erratically over too many excitatory and inhibitory synapses.
So, doctor, are there any treatment plans available for Tom and his autism?
Okay, well, I just want to make it clear this disorder is not curable. However, research has shown that it has no connections with vaccination. So, keep him up on his vaccinations and everything. However, after we take MRIs and certain screenings, we will create a whole plan laid out for him, such as certain therapies like behavioral therapies and family therapies. And for example, for behavioral therapy, we'll teach them on how to behave in certain situations. And the family therapy kind of helps with the whole family, how you and his brother and father can interact with him.
Okay.
And then as well, we have sensory therapies, and because autism really affects his senses, so we'll kind of help him with that. And it's a lot of therapies that
Tommy, can you turn the volume down, okay? I'm talking to your doctor. Thank you. Also, doctor, are there any medications available that I can get Tom on to help with his autism?
Yes, there are many medications for certain areas. We have antidepressants that will help him with his anxiety, antipsychotic for his behavioral issues, and then we have medication for his hyperactivity. Really, we will do all of this after we do the diagnostic and the developmental screenings. In your next appointment, so I'll be seeing you soon and everything. So don't worry, we will get it straightened out for you.
Thank you so much for meeting with us,
Nice
doctor.
meeting you. And nice meeting you,
Tell the
Tom.
doctor bye.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was once thought that autism was simply one condition and not a varied array of symptoms and diagnoses available for children. Information about autism spectrum disorder is ever changing, and though the information presented is only part of the picture, it's the part that we have. And with the knowledge that it's a spectrum and people continuing to work and fund research for autism, more information will become available and it will be a better understood condition, which means it'll be a more manageable condition.